Good day, everyone. I'm Katrina Bian Banzon, and the topic that I've chosen to present is Elginism. How would you feel if someone brought down the altar of San Sebastian Basilica, the only prefabricated steel basilica in the world, or the facade of the Miagao Church, a UNESCO World Heritage, being carved out away from the Philippines and taken to other countries such as Belgium, and we'll call it their own? If you felt like you've been robbed, your feeling is valid. This is what Elginism is. Elginism is the act of cultural vandalism, or taking cultural treasures from one country to another. Elginism originally derived from Thomas Bruce, the 7th Earl of Elgin. He was a British ambassador of the Ottoman Empire and allegedly took artifacts from Greece, which by then under Turkish control, in 1799 to 1841. In this period of time, educated people admired the ancient Greek art and classical architecture. They believed that it was the highest expression of civilization and presumed that by gazing upon the great works of the Greeks, they would acquire the spirit of the artist and its work. Lord Elgin then saw an opportunity to raise the standard of British society. His plans were to visit the ancient Greek capital with a number of artists and sketch the monuments, statues, buildings, and bring them to England. However, he was allegedly bringing back drawings and artifacts for his own country house. Elgin then took a vast number of relics such as friezes, pediment sculptures, statues, antacapital, crown moldings, architrave, cornice, and a caryatid from the Parthenon and other buildings in Athens under the permission given by the Sublime Porte, a government of the Ottoman Empire. Lord Elgin took approximately half the surviving sculptures of the chief temple goddess of Athena. Due to this, heavy critics are being thrown to Lord Elgin, one of which was by Lord Byron, who felt scorn upon the actions of Thomas Bruce. He wrote multiple poems including the infamous one, The Curse of Nerva, as he felt the ravaged Parthenon became more despoiled and considered the relics as the corpse of a whole culture. Written on his poem, Childe Harold, quote, "Dull is the eye that will not weep to see, thy walls defaced, thy mouldering shrines removed, by British hands, which it has best behoved, to guard those relics near to be restored. Cursed be the hour when from their isle they rode, and once again thy hapless bosom gored, and snatched thy shrinking gods to northern climes abhorred." Because of the acquisitions and debts, Lord Elgin was forced to sell the sculptures to the British Museum and was displayed since 1817. The display relics are now known as Elgin marbles. In 1832, when the Greeks earned their independence, they fought for the return of their relics. This battle is still in the process until today. The Greek Minister of Culture, Evangelos Venizelos, stated that the request for the restitution of the Parthenon marbles is not made by the Greek government, in the name of the Greek nation, or of Greek history. It is made in the name of the cultural heritage of the world and with the voice of the mutilated monument itself that cries out for its marbles to be returned. Although the term Elginism did not end there, nor did it only happen in that era, when invading a country or seizing of land by one country to another, the removal of relics became common since they represent as trophies from the winning of the war. The justifications of the removal of relics are commonly concerned with preservation and the need to remove them temporarily. Elginism then recognized to be spoils of war throughout history. One example of this is the Balangiga church bells of the Philippines. During the 1899 to 1902 Philippine-American War, the soldiers took 3 church bells in Balangiga, a small town in eastern Samar. The U.S. ambassador said that it was an honor to close a painful chapter of history because as of 2018, the iconic church bells were returned to their home 117 years later. To prevent the repetition of the past and illicit trafficking of artifacts, the United Nations Educational, Specific, and Cultural Organization, or UNESCO, has laid international laws which are 1. The 1954 Hague Convention for the Protection of Cultural Property in the Event of Armed Conflict. This convention aims to protect the cultural property such as monuments, architecture, art or history, archaeological sites, work of art, manuscript, books, and other artistic, historical, or archaeological interests, as well as scientific collections of any kind regardless of their origin or ownership. Next is the 1970 Convention on the means of prohibiting and preventing the illicit import, export, and transfer of ownership of cultural property. This convention is more commonly known as the 1970 Unesco Convention, or sometimes called as the Paris Convention. It refers to the acquisition of cultural property and requires that new acquisitions will have been and are required honestly, that museums will not trade in illicitly acquired objects, and that the museums and other cultural organizations will work together to combat the illicit trafficking of cultural property. Next is the 1972 Convention concerning the protection of the world cultural and natural heritage. This convention recognizes the way in which people interact with nature and the fundamental need to preserve the balance between the two. Lastly is the 1995 Unidroid Convention on Stolen or Illegally Exported Cultural Objects. It defines clandestinely excavated objects and specifies that illegally excavated objects are considered to be stolen and thus fall under the body of law dealing with stolen objects. It also sets out a time frame within which private owners or states can apply for restitution of their objects, 50 years and within 3 years of knowledge of the location of the object and identification of its possessor.